The Faith and Fishing podcast is sponsored by 413 Lure Company. 413 Lure Company is a family-owned and operated business that puts Christ first and does things the right way. Using really high-quality components, they make some really awesome spinnerbaits, buzzbaits, bladed swim jigs, and more in some really sweet color combinations. Check them out on Facebook to see what they can do and place your order today. Hey y'all, just wanted to apologize for the sound quality issues in this week's episode. A little bit past the halfway point, there will be some issues where the story gets cut off and then comes back in and then gets cut off again. We had a little bit of a computer issue during the recording, and I wanted to apologize for that y'all didn't get to hear that part of the story. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and we're going to jump right in. Welcome to the Faith and Fishing podcast, where you get to hear all kinds of fishermen tell their stories and share their faith. I'm your host, Cam Steele. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing podcast with me, your host, Cam Steele. Sorry about missing last week. Life happened, y'all know how it goes, but hopefully y'all were able to get caught up and are ready for this week's episode. Before we jump into the interview, just want to say thank you to all of you who have been sharing the episodes with your friends. That helps others find the show, and I really appreciate it. Since I missed last week on y'all, I'll keep the intro short this week so that we can jump right into the interview. This week we have tournament angler and Jakked Baits Pro Staff Manager, Kevin Franklin. Kevin, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here, Cam.
Absolutely. So to get us started, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about you and tell us how you got into fishing.
Yeah, my name's Kevin Franklin. I'm originally here from western North Carolina in a small town by the name of Morganton. It's west of Hickory, North Carolina, and east of Asheville, about an hour from Asheville. Growing up as a young child, spent a lot of time outdoors, especially in multiple sports and so forth. And obviously fishing was one of those activities we participated in when I was younger. As I got older, had a family and so forth, obviously had to change my direction in life and raise the children and got away from the sport. But as the kids got older, got back into fishing, and eventually probably a number of years ago got into tournament fishing. And now I probably participate anywhere from 35 to 50 tournaments a year throughout the southeastern United States, but mainly focused here in North and South Carolina.
Okay, absolutely. So as you know, this is the Faith and Fishing podcast. So one of the main reasons I brought you on is to talk about your faith. So in a nutshell, go ahead and tell us what it is that you believe in.
Yeah, growing up as a child, my father was very instrumental in having me in church. So as a young boy, we were members of Hopewell Baptist Church, which is part of the Baptist Southern Division. And to this day, I'm still a member at Hopewell. I actually live less than a quarter of a mile from the church, and it's always been a part of my life. One of the things that I've used in my professional career as started out was in a management role, moved into various upper management roles, and for the last 15 years been operating and running manufacturing facilities. And I've used my faith as a way to minister not only to my employees, but let them know that, that Jesus is there for us, to support us as long as we, live our lives the right way. And I always keep a board in my office, and on that board, the employees can see it. I have that, the verse, Philippians 4:13, do all things are possible through Christ, which strengthened me. And I explained to them, how Christ has impacted my life. So faith has always been very important growing up as a child. And I've tried to instill that into all three of my children as well. I've never been one to be pushy on anyone as it relates to my beliefs in Christianity, but at the same time, I've never backed down and allowed someone to maybe walk over me, and try to discount, what Jesus means to me in my life.
Absolutely. And you mentioned um, you mentioned going through or going to church as a child. If you wouldn't mind, kind of letting us know, tell us the story of how it was you came to believe in Christ.
Yeah, my father and I, like I said, every opportunity that the doors are open, Dad had to be involved in some way, shape, or form in the church. When I was younger, it was Sunday school. As I got older, it was in youth group and so forth. I was about 10 years old or so when I finally realized that it was important and that I was ready to receive Jesus into my heart and ask Him for the forgiveness of my sins. So I was saved then at Hopewell Baptist Church at about 10 years old. Um, that's something that I instilled those values in my children, but I didn't push on them, that, when they needed to be saved. I let that, be something that they were guided by Christ in. And each and every one of my children, which I've got 3 children now, my son's 28. I've got our oldest daughter's 22, and now our youngest daughter is just getting ready to turn 15. And they're all saved. They all have a love for the Lord. And, that's probably what makes me the most proud as a parent that I was able to instill in them the things that my father instilled in me. I allowed them to make choices for themselves, but I also tried to bring them up in a spiritual way to give them that foundation, just like my father gave me.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned getting saved and not pushing that on your kids, letting them just know whenever it was right for them. If they asked, how would you let them know when the right time was?
One of the things I told my kids, because when my son was younger, we had this discussion, and I told him, I said, you have to feel the presence of the Lord in your life. You have to feel like that He's directly communicating with you. If you truly believe that God exists and that Christ exists and they are part of your daily life, I said, they'll speak to you in many ways. While it won't be a voice that they hear audibly, it'll be something that they feel in their heart. And, I let that process work just like my father let it work in me. And like I said, fortunately, all 3 of my children are saved. Um, it doesn't happen. I understand it doesn't happen with everyone at the same time. And what I explain to people is it doesn't matter if it's on your last breath or if it's in your first breath or anywhere in between of your life. If you accept Christ, He's going to be there for you. He's going to forgive you of your sins. And, and that is the step to heaven. And no matter what that timing is. So I'm a firm believer in that because that's what we're taught in the Bible.
Absolutely. And so as Christians, we tend to throw around words a lot that we may be the only ones in the room who understand. So if we happen to have any listeners who don't know what it means to be saved, why don't you go ahead and explain to our listeners what it means to be saved and how you become saved?
Yeah, ultimately, the one thing that I stressed to my children was, first we have to get into the Word of God. And the best way to do that is by reading the Bible. Okay, understanding what His teachings were. What are the 10 Commandments? Those fundamental beliefs as Christians that we have. Ultimately, as you understand those, either those commandments or those beliefs, that I feel that a person's life begins to transform or change. You can't continue to live in sin, but also walk a walk with Jesus Christ. While we're all sinners, even as saved individual, I realize that I'm going to commit sin, and I have to ask for forgiveness of those sins. But there's also a difference in walking the Christian life and walking that life living nothing but within sin. And so I think that's the big distinction is once you've accepted Christ into your heart, you're a different person. You understand, more clearly the differences in right and wrong. To me, God will make us feel guilty. If we know we're making the wrong choices or living the wrong life, if we truly have God in our heart, we'll feel guilt from that. So, that would probably be the best lesson that I could tell anyone that is contemplating, the life that they're living today and how they can, improve that by accepting Jesus into their heart.
Okay, absolutely. So what would you say it means to you? What does it mean to you to have faith?
Um, I could sum it up in this. The job that I have today, I'm a leader of people. I lead a manufacturing organization that requires the work of many people doing a lot of different things for an ultimate goal of manufacturing a product that goes out into the market. I'm really no different in my personal life. I'm still a leader of people. And the reason I say that is because that's what Christ has asked us to do. It's our responsibility as Christians to, help show others the way. We need to be that beacon of light for Christ. And I feel like that, the way I treat individuals, the way I carry myself, the people I associate with, the way I talk in everyday life around to others, I think all of that is observed and watched by others. And I think ultimately that's my way of showing them who I am through Jesus Christ.
Absolutely, that's awesome. So, we are going to kind of start transitioning back towards fishing a little bit here. So, are there any specific times out on the water that you can think of that have affected your faith in any way?
Oh, many times. When things are not going well on the water, especially in tournaments, tournament it's different than fun fishing. You've always got something on the line, and what you've got on the line, whether it be money, your reputation, your pride, so there's barriers that get in the way of it at any given time throughout a tournament, and every tournament. It never goes smooth. And sometimes I have to catch myself and realize that regardless of whether I'm being watched by any particular person, because a lot of times I'm out there on the boat by myself, I have to understand that God's watching me. He's watching everything I do. He hears everything I say, and he knows everything that I think. So I have to keep that in mind a lot of times and remind myself, just because things aren't going my way, or maybe the way that I expected them to go, that there's still an expectation for me to carry myself in a manner that's befitting of the Christian life. So yeah, there's been plenty of opportunities for me to do the right thing and act the right way, and I've done that. There's been plenty of opportunities for me not to act the right way, and unfortunately, I could say that yeah, I've done that too. I think that's all a part of that's all a part of the walk with our Lord. Like I said, there's one perfect man to ever put his feet on this earth, and we know that was Jesus Christ. I'm not perfect. I understand I'm not perfect. I know that I'm going to sin, and I know I can ask for forgiveness from those sins. But fishing can be frustrating, man. It's also very rewarding. One of the things that I'm always amazed at is the first thing when I start a tournament, whether, in some tournament settings, some particular organizations that run tournaments, they'll actually have prayer before the tournament. If it's a trail that doesn't have prayer, then I'll sit in my boat and I'll say a prayer, just to myself, that one-on-one communication with the Lord. But usually it's early in the morning, the very first stop, and I always make and take the opportunity to look around me and appreciate what God's provided. The things that we're fortunate enough to see out there on the water, are amazing at times. Some beautiful things, beautiful scenery, wildlife, for instance. I've seen things anywhere from wild turkeys to deer to rabbits to squirrels to bear. Just about everything you can name I've seen in its natural habitat. And the one thing that I come back to is those individuals, especially in the sciences, that firmly believe that this world and this earth was created by some type of Big Bang explosion and so forth, obviously have never been in a fishing tournament at 7 o'clock in the morning with the dew still falling and seeing the beauty that I see out there, and therefore come to the realization there is no way that an explosion of any sort, of any Big Bang theory, could have been created that way. The only way that could have been created would be by the hand of God. And that's what most amazes me and keeps me humble, especially in my walk.
Absolutely. All right, so this next question has become one of my favorites of the interview, and as you can imagine, I've gotten some really awesome stories out of it. But what fishing story or memory means the most to you?
Oh goodness. I'll tell you a funny story. It's something that's talked about amongst a lot of my friends. I was practicing for a tournament a number of years ago that was going to be held on Lake Norman, which is here in North Carolina, and it was just right after the first year, so it was really early January, and for that time of year, it was it was probably in the low 20s. Water temperatures were down into the mid 40s, and put my boat in the water, tied it off to the dock, pulled the trailer up out of the water, of course, and went down the dock, cranked it up. Boat was completely dead. For whatever reason, the battery went dead. And so for anybody that's ever had this happen, obviously the only way to get the boat back to the trailer and put it back is with a trolling motor, since the big motor won't crank. Well, using a trolling motor, of course, you can't drive a boat up on the trailer. You can somewhat steer it towards the trailer. You can get it to float to a certain extent, but you're going to have to get off. You're going to have to connect the winch to it. You're going to have to pull it up out of the, you're going to literally have to pull it out of the water with the winch on the front of the trailer. Well, that particular day, like I said, it was about low 20s, water temp in the low 40s. I floated the boat up on the trailer as far as I could, with my right leg reached down, got what I felt was a firm foundation on the trailer, felt good, went to swing my other leg over so I could walk up the frame of the trailer. Well, the boat had been pulled back out of the water, so the frame of the trailer in that area was covered in ice. Well, of course, I went completely horizontal, landed in the water, soaking wet from head to toe. And, it was cold, man. I mean, it was cold. So I went ahead, got the boat up on the trailer, pulled up into the parking lot, started stripping clothes off. I didn't, for whatever reason, this is one of those moments that I say, this is God's way of humbling us. That particular day, I didn't have a change of clothes, didn't have extra socks, Didn't have an extra pair of shoes, nothing. I mean, I had what was on me and it was soaking wet, and that includes a rain suit. And, I decided, where I live in Morganton was from this particular area on Lake Norman is almost an hour and a half drive. And I decided right then, I said, no, I'm not turning around and going home. I'm going to get a battery for this boat and I'm going to fish. So I found a local Walmart nearby. When I got there, I realized, Kevin, you don't have any clothes, man. You are soaking wet. You got nothing. So what I did was I took everything off. I was completely naked in the truck, and I put that rain suit back on. So that's all I had was a coat and the bibs. No shoes, anything. And I went walking into Walmart. Went in there, got a battery, got a cart, got a battery, decided I got to get some dry clothes. So went through the men's department, found some shoes, socks, sweatpants, everything that I would need to at least keep me dry. And, went to the checkout and went through, and the lady started checking me out, and she started looking at the things, and she's checked them out. And she looked at me and she looked how I was dressed. She said, "Sir, are you okay?" And I looked at her and said, I'm fine. I fell in the water. This is going to get me warm, get me back out on the boat. Everything's going to be fine. She said, okay. Well, I was so excited at the time. I was still cold. I was wet. I wasn't thinking straight. So instead of walking right into the restroom and changing and putting those clothes on and going outside, I walked straight to the truck. I had parked in an area in the parking lot that, I felt was, away from everything because it was real early in the morning. There was very, very few people there whatsoever. So I had parked, well away from the main entrance, and I thought I was by myself, and, got up on the boat, put the battery in, and then I commenced while I was sitting there in the boat. I thought, well, instead of getting down, I'll just change clothes right here in the boat, and then I'll get down, I'll head back over to the lake. So I'm standing in the lower, the bottom of the boat, and I start stripping, the bibs and the coat off, and literally I'm standing there naked. I mean, but I'm by myself over what I thought I was. You ever had that feeling that somebody's watching you? All of a sudden I look over my shoulder and there's a car about, I don't know, maybe 3 rows over from where I was, and it was the only car sitting there. And there was these 2 elderly women sitting in the car, and I'm standing there butt naked. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? So I just reached down and put those jogging pants on real slow. I got back in the truck and I called my wife and I told her what happened. And to this day, man, I have not lived that down. I've heard that story so many times and so many people have laughed. And I said, Kevin, did you walk over and apologize? When I looked up, my friend, I'm like, are you kidding? I was standing here naked in front of these women. No, I didn't walk over to them. I said, I didn't want to get arrested because they thought I was some type of freak or something. So anyway,
that was awesome.
That was some bad judgment on my part, but I was just focused and concentrating on getting back to the lake, and I wasn't paying attention. And lo and behold, I ended up naked in a Walmart parking lot in front of 2 elderly women. So that's my funny story for fishing over the last number of years.
I hear you. So I have to ask, have you ever forgotten a change of clothes since?
No. I always have some form of dry clothes. It may not be to the same level of what I'm wearing at that point, but no, I always have clothes now.
All right. So, outside of telling that story, whenever you're out fishing with a buddy, what is your typical conversation centered around?
Oh, goodness. Sometimes it really depends on the mood of the day. Sometimes it's, just how our families are doing, for instance, how children are doing, what the wives are up to, how our day-to-day work is going. And then other times, man, it's, even as a grown adult I just turned 50 years old my last birthday, which was back in December. And so I feel like I told my children, I said, well, I finally crossed over the hill, it's all the way downhill from here. But sometimes we'll get out on the boat, man, and it's just such a pleasurable day that we act like a bunch of teenagers sometimes, and it makes me think that I'm back in high school at times. So it really just depends. I mean, we get silly, we get a little comical at times, other times very serious. It really depends. But the one thing that, and I've told my kids this for years, and I tell all my employees as well, you're only as old as you act. Now, I'm not going to act like a 15-year-old, but I'm also not going to act like a 50-year-old. So I try to act as young as I can. But most of the time it's just, nonsensical type kind of comical things, joking around, enjoying the day and enjoying, overall the pleasures of what God's provided. I told, my wife recently that, I was really thankful that God gave me the ability to fish competitively. That's not for everyone, man. To me, it creates an adrenaline rush. And it, fulfills, the need that I had when I was very competitive, playing other types of sports when I was younger. Well, that's the one thing I found as I've gotten older. The body has started to give in places, and I can't do those things, but that's what tournament fishing has replaced for me. But the one thing I don't do, man, I don't take life serious. Life is too short to be so serious. I really try to keep it lighthearted. So that would probably be the most important thing when we're out on the boat any given day. It's just keep everything lighthearted and focused.
Absolutely. All right. So you mentioned being a father, and so this next question: what life advice do you wish that you had been able to start off with, and that you really have been trying to instill in your kids to go forward with them?
Make time for others. Make sure that you don't center too much of your time on yourself and your own desires. Make sure that you give back. Giving back as a Christian can be done in many ways. It can obviously be done by tithing and giving money, because that money could be used in a way to glorify God, but it could also be done with time. You can give back with your gifts, of those things that, you're capable of doing that maybe others can't. So ultimately, I've instilled in them that, giving back in some way, shape, or form is probably the most gratifying thing that a person could do. I want all three of my children to be, competitive in nature, but ultimately very caring as well. And, so that would probably be the number one thing. Make time for others.
Absolutely. So, before I ask the next question, do your kids fish with you?
My son did some. He never really got into tournament fishing, but my son was a football player, and he actually played collegiately. He went to a small school in Southwest Virginia, called Ferrum College, and he was a 4-year starter there at Ferrum College, and that was really more his passion. Now, as he's gotten older, he lives just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where he works, actually in downtown Atlanta. So, I don't really get to see him that much. He never really got into the fishing scene. My oldest daughter, who's 22, she never really took an interest in fishing at all. That just wasn't her thing. But the youngest daughter, who's 15, she doesn't really care to fish. She tells me all the time she doesn't have the patience for it, which she's right. She doesn't have the patience for it. But what she does love about fishing, because she loves to go out on the boat with me, is she loves to do her thing on the boat while I'm fishing. But as soon as I catch a fish, then she's the first one to jump up. Let me hold it. Let me get a picture. So she loves to hold them and touch them and see them. and release them and get videos and pictures with them. She just doesn't care to take the time to catch them. So she lets me do the catching, and then she gets all the glory from it. So there's been many times where people have seen pictures and say, man, your daughter, she's great. Look at all the fish she catches. And I just look at them and say, if you only knew. If you only knew. So that's mine and her little thing. But none of my children ever really got into the competitive side of fishing. It it wasn't something that they were that interested in.
Right, absolutely. Well, whenever you're teaching someone to fish, what fishing advice do you wish you had been able to start off with, and that you're always passing along to others?
Slow down. People get too excited and want to fish too fast. If you just slow down, enjoy the moment, take pride in whatever technique you're doing, I find that I'm much more successful as I've gotten older when I realized fishing doesn't have to be cast, burn it in, cast, burn it in. When I was younger, I didn't have the patience that I needed to have. And I think that's how people, when they first get started, they don't catch large quantities of fish. So therefore they get frustrated with it very easily. But over time, if you're just patient and you'll take the opportunity to slow down, I think a lot of times that builds some confidence. And then from that confidence, I believe personally, that's what builds, a love for fishing.
Yeah, for sure. That was one that it took me a while to learn, is to slow down. And then whenever I switched over to bait casters, I had to learn how to do it all over again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, man. So, what you've been fishing for a long time. What fish sits at the top of your bucket list that you want to be able to catch?
I've still never caught, let me say this. I have not caught a 10-pound largemouth, a 10-pound or greater largemouth. I've got numerous largemouth, in, the low to high 8-pound range. But a 10-pound largemouth for this area would be rare anyway. We just don't have fish in western North Carolina that are that size. Now, I did catch a few that were pushing 10 pounds on a trip that I took a number of years ago at Lake Okeechobee. But I was with a guide. It's the first time I'd ever been on Lake Okeechobee there in Florida. And that in itself is a whole different kind of fishery anyway. I mean, it's just like nothing else you could ever go to. And but we were actually catching 8, 9, almost 10-pound largemouth using what they live bait. So they were actually, with a guide, he was actually rigging up and using shiners. Well, I figured, a shiner, okay, let's go get some shiners and go fishing. I thought maybe a 5 or 6 inch shiner, and that's how we go catch largemouth. No, they were using shiners that were 12 and 14 inches long. Okay. They look like keepers that we're catching at Lake Norman, like the spotted bass keepers. And we were catching those. But so, but I don't consider that to be the same, because as a tournament fisherman, we're not allowed to use live bait at all. So everything is artificial. And so I always separate that experience with any other type of fishing that I do. I'm strictly a freshwater fisherman, and for the most part, I'm strictly a bass fisherman. That's my desire, man. That's what I have the desire to do and catch is bass. That doesn't mean I won't get into some other things. I mean, just this past weekend, I went fishing for fun on Lake James here in western North Carolina, and I got into some of the largest crappie that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we're talking about crappie that were somewhere in that range of about 12, 13, 14 inches long. Big crappie. I didn't even know that Lake James had those size crappies. So, I mean, if I get into something like that, yeah, I have a ball catching them just like anybody else does, but that's not what my intent is.
Right.
I don't really care for any type of saltwater, inshore type fishing, or even deep sea fishing. I've done it. I just, the old joke that I heard a number of years ago, and and it stuck with me, and I like it is, uh, anybody can go out in the ocean and drop off vertical over a boat and catch all types of fish. But God created bass tournaments and bass fishing for those that wanted a little bit more of a challenge. So that's my joke for the day. Bass fishing is more of a challenge than just going out in the ocean and dropping over the side and catching something. So
Right. All right. So, what about a fishing spot? Is there a particular spot you haven't fished yet that sits at the top of your bucket list?
Well, I fished Lake Okeechobee. That was one of my, I guess you'd call it my bucket list lakes. I always said that eventually I would, fish Lake Guntersville, which I've done now. I actually was there, on a weekend and had to go out in the lake during the middle of a hurricane that had come inshore. So that was an experience that I had hoped to never experience, but I got to anyway because we had some boaters get stranded and my boat was, I was available and there, so we had to go out to help them. Um, really, if I didn't get to fish again today, um, I'd be satisfied. I would. I've fished so many lakes now. A couple of years ago, there was a gentleman. It was in the news, and you may or may not remember this. There's a lake in eastern North Carolina called Sharon Harris, and a gentleman over a period of it's either 1 week or 3 consecutive days. Anyway, he had 3 consecutive bags over 40 pounds in 5 fish each time off of this reservoir called Sharon Harris. And so I always said that I wanted to go and fish Sharon Harris because of that. Well, last year I was able to go down and fish a tournament down there. Now, it was rewarding, but it was also very disappointing because I've never thrown back so many. I caught fit into that slot limit, and I was throwing back anywhere from 4 pounds to 5.5 pound fish. Else I caught was huge, but not huge enough.
Right.
So I caught more fish on Sharon Harris than I probably caught anywhere other than Lake Okeechobee, and more big fish, but couldn't whale one of them in the tournament because they fit into that slot. But man, it was enjoyable. So yeah, I mean, I'd be satisfied right now if I never got to fish again. I think I've done everything I could possibly want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Sharon Harris is just down the road for me, and that one's a fun one.
Oh yeah. Now Jordan Lake's another one. I've fished Jordan a number of times, and Jordan Lake's got some big fish, but it also can be a frustrating lake. Um, Actually, the only time I've ever been on a lake, even compared to when I was on Lake Guntersville and had to go out in that hurricane to help some stranded guys, actually didn't compare to a time I was on Jordan and the wind was blowing down that lake over 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And the ramp we were putting on was down on the lower end, and the waves and the swells were so high they were crashing over the dock. So we had nowhere that we could even get our boats close to the dock. The waves were actually crashing over our boats. It was actually a scary scene, man. We had to pull our boats as close to shore as we could, stand up and throw our car keys up on the bank. And there were people up on the bank then, going and finding our vehicles and coming down, and they had a ramp that didn't have a dock next to it because it was actually too dangerous next to the docks because the boats were getting slammed into them. Actually, the waves lifted a couple boats and nearly almost set them on top of the dock. That's how bad it was.
Oh man, that's crazy.
So that was the scariest situation I've ever had. Would have been there on Jordan Lake, but that happened one season, and the very next season I was right back there again. So I didn't let it deter me. But it's a good place to fish, man. It was just some unfortunate circumstance.
Right. All right, man. Well, we're going to go into a segment here. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's called What's Your Favorite? So I'm going to
Okay.
be asking your favorite in a few different categories here. So to start off with, do you have a favorite scripture?
Philippians 4:13.
All right, and you already said that one was um, or all things are
I can
possible.
I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me.
Yep. All right. So how about a favorite Bible story?
Oh goodness, man, there's so many. Um, Maybe Jonah in the well, the story about Jonah in the belly of the well.
All right. And so pretty sure I've got it narrowed down to a few at least. But
Okay.
I may know your answer to this one. What's your favorite fish to catch?
Smallmouth bass.
All right. What is it about the smallies?
Oh, the fierceness of a smallmouth bass. A lot of people don't have the luxury to catch smallmouth, especially not in the southeastern United States, but I'm fortunate in the lake that is my home lake here in Lake James is actually full of smallmouth bass. And, a 3-pound smallmouth bass will fight like a 7 or 8 pound largemouth. They're very, very aggressive. They have markings like no other fish, really, compared to like a spot or a largemouth would ever have. To me, it's a beautiful animal, but the fierceness of it and the way it fights, and especially the way they feed, that probably, creates the strongest desire for me as it relates to if I had the choice to catch one type and one type only.
All right. And so smallies are your favorite to catch. What about which one's your favorite to fish for?
I'll tell you my least favorite. My
Okay.
least favorite is a Lake Norman spot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The Lake Norman spots, man, see, you can go down there and we can catch 40 or 50 or 60 of the things in a trip and never catch one over 14 inches. It's just not the same strain of spotted bass like what you see down in Alabama, for instance, or definitely like what you see on the West Coast. Wish it
Right.
were, but it's not. And they just, I don't know if I'm not a biologist by any mean, a marine biologist. I don't know if their size is because of the strain or if their size is predictive, because there's so many of them there. But they can be the most frustrating thing to catch because especially when you're in a tournament, you can have 5 of them. You can't seem to find a largemouth. And in 5 of those darn things, you'd be lucky to have 6 pounds. So that would be my least favorite fish to catch is a Lake Norman spot.
All right. And which fish is your favorite to eat?
Actually, my favorite fish to eat, if I broke it down into freshwater and saltwater, even though I don't enjoy saltwater fishing, I love a good flounder.
For sure.
Something about flounder I like, but if from a freshwater standpoint, you can't beat a walleye. And again, I'm fortunate in that the lake that's my home lake here in western North Carolina is one of the only lakes to have walleye in it. That's Lake James again. Not as many as they used to have. So the population is definitely much smaller than it was when I was growing up as a child. But even my 15-year-old daughter will tell you there's nothing better than a fresh walleye.
Absolutely. How do you like your walleye cooked?
Fried, man. Absolutely. Fillet that thing, take the belly meat. My mother-in-law does it the best. She soaks it in, some salt and draws out any of the blood that might be there and any of that, fishy taste. That's the one thing I'm not crazy about is I don't want that fishy taste in my fish, but she'll pack it in some salt and let it draw that out. And once it does, she'll rinse it real good, pack it again, let that draw it out, rinse it real good, and then she'll batter it, fry it up, man. Heck yeah, I'm from the South, man. The fried, the better. We know it's going to kill us, but, it's got to be fried.
All right, I hear you. All right, so while we're on the subject of food, what's your favorite fishing snack?
Pork rinds.
All
They're
right.
easy to get and easy to eat, and if you crumble them on you something, then the wind blows them off, and that's the easiest thing, man.
Absolutely. Any particular flavor?
Plain. I don't like my pork rinds flavored. I just want some salt on them, and that's it, man.
All right. All right, and I'm not going to ask for any GPS coordinates or secret spots or anything,
Yep.
but what's your favorite body of water to fish on?
I know most people would probably say, well, it's got to be his home lake of Lake James, but it's actually not. I love Lake James. I would say probably Lake Hickory. I've been fortunate enough to catch some of my personal best bass on Lake Hickory. Caught it was an 8 pound, 2 ounce largemouth on July the 4th one year. I want to say it was about 2017, 2016. Caught it on 6 pound test fluorocarbon with 1/8 ounce jig head, and it was quite the battle. But yeah, probably Lake Hickory. A buddy of mine and I fished in the Carolinas Bass Challenge Series for the last number of years, and back in, I want to say it was in 2017 or 2016, we also had big fish off of Lake Hickory as well in the CBC, and won $1,000 for an 8 pound, 12 ounce largemouth, I believe it was. So yeah, Lake Hickory probably my my favorite.
Awesome. And last but not least, what's your favorite time of year to fish?
Dude, I love to fish the wintertime. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Number one, the wintertime, the big bass come out. If you're fortunate enough to get around, you're going to have your biggest stringer ever by fishing in the wintertime. But even more so, the reason I like fishing in the winter is I don't have to deal with the wake boats in the winter. I have the lake to myself because nobody wants to be out there. I'm very warm natured anyway, so I don't require a lot of clothing. So it can be 35 degrees on the water, and I'm happy as can be, man. So yeah, wintertime definitely is my favorite. Now, if I had to say what my favorite technique is, my ultimate favorite technique really doesn't come to play in the wintertime. That's just my favorite time to fish, but my favorite technique will probably start here in another month, if not sooner, and carry right on into the summertime. And I love, man, being early in the morning, right as the sun's starting to come up, throwing a buzzbait, coming across the tops of laydowns and things, and just that explosion of when that big bass comes up and just absolutely pushes that bait out of the water, man. There's nothing more exciting than that. So.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start wrapping things up, man. If you would, let us know what's upcoming for you.
Well, right now, this COVID-19 has kind of put a damper on everything, man. All tournaments have been canceled. So I've been spending the last 3 weeks more or less doing something I haven't done in a number of years, and that's just fun fishing. I've not been going to certain bodies to concentrate on certain areas for preparing for tournaments. I just been going out and having fun, man. And it looks like that's going to continue on through at least the end of May, because from everything I understand, they're not going to approve. They're still going to have all tournament registration, the permits at the landing circle are still going to be null and void right now. So I'm going to be doing a lot of fun fishing, man. I mean, the fish are coming up right now. The largemouth are already making their move in all of our lakes. If not, down in Lake Norman, they're already on beds. Up here in Lake James, they'll be moving any time. There's a few now on beds. So, I always enjoy going, and I don't necessarily enjoy bed fishing. That's not my forte. I really like to fish deep. I like to fish out on the main channel more than I like to go fish what we call in the dirt. But I love to go see the fish sitting in the beds. Sometimes I'll go out there and just pull up and just watch them and see, the gracefulness of a bass sitting on that bed. And, I'll flip in there and play around with them and see how aggressive they are. I mean, they'll guard their babies just like human beings will guard their children. Those bats will guard their eggs and eventually guard their fry the same way. So that's getting ready to happen here in North Carolina. Beyond that, we're just going to have to see, man, what COVID-19 does. I mean, it's changed everyone's life right now. So I wish I could say I'd be hot and heavy in the tournament scene. Normally I've got a tournament every week, from now till end of July. But right now that's kind of on the hold right now. So I guess I'm going to just concentrate on fun fishing, man.
All right. And do you want to give a shout out to any sponsors or supporters?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fortunate to do what I do and get a lot of support from a number of companies, man. Obviously, first and foremost, Jacked and owner Tom Lloyd Jr. We've worked together now for a number of years, and Tom has been very helpful with me, even in my fishing career. Also, I work with a company called Six Gill Fishing, who provides all of my equipment, both rods and reels. They're located out of Texas. Great organization. In addition to that, other companies that I work closely with, I have a gentleman by the name of Robert Weicker. Robert is he does custom baits. So he paints most all of my hard baits. He does custom for me, and even created my own Kevin Franklin Fishing line of custom baits as well. So that's at Line Out Custom Tackle. In addition to that, I also support a couple other organizations by the name of Elite Angler, which is companies owned by Donnie Wilson and Big Al McCulloch, who are both, especially Big Al, well known up in Missouri around the Lake of the Ozarks and so forth. As well as some smaller companies that I do some work with as well. But I would say those are the major companies that I've worked with and that support me tremendously throughout my bass fishing career.
Absolutely. And if our listeners want to get in touch with you or follow you on social media, how do they find you?
Yeah, a couple different ways, both Instagram and Facebook. I have, if you look up Kevin Franklin Fishing on both of those. So I have my own fishing page on Facebook, and then my Instagram account, of course, is related to my fishing page as well. Then you can also find me on my personal page in Facebook as well, which is Kevin Wesley Franklin. So people can see the things that I've got going on. I try to stay pretty active with that, showing people not only what I'm doing in fishing, but also a little bit of a personal side of what's going on in my life as well. So they're welcome to take a look at that. If have any questions, they can always send me an instant message. I even have my cell phone on my Kevin Franklin Fishing page there on Facebook as well. They can send me a text as well. I try to be as open and honest and forthright with people as possible. At this point, I realize at my age, Cam, that, I'm not going pro to the FLW or the MLF or Bass and so forth while I'll fish FLW, BFL tournaments, when available, and some other open tournaments and things. I realize that at this point in my life, I'm not going pro now. So I've taken the opportunity to really give back to others, the younger kids out there that are wanting to learn. I'm willing to pass along any knowledge I can to help them. So tell them, give me a call, contact me, and I'll be more than happy to give you some advice.
All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed it, had a blast, and I wish you all the best, man.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it too, Cam. Hope we can do it again.
Again, a big thank you to Kevin for coming on the show and sharing some of his amazing stories with us. If you want to find out more about Kevin and Jacked Baits, I'll leave links to both in the show notes. And even though I haven't been mentioning it in other episodes, links to social media, YouTube, and websites for previous guests are also in the show notes for their episodes. Be sure to share this week's episode, and again, thank you all for listening. Y'all take care, and God bless. Thanks for listening to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. If you like this episode, please give it a rating, a review, and make sure to subscribe on whatever app you're listening to so you never miss an episode. You can follow the podcast on social media at facebook.com/faithandfishingpodcast and Instagram at faithandfishingpod. Special thanks and a big shout out to our show sponsor, 413 Lure Company, to Jonathan Enthalancy for helping me write, play, and record the music for the show, and to Tyler Worrell, the graphic designer behind our amazing logo. If you have any questions about faith, I encourage you to contact a pastor in your community. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, get out there and catch some fish, and I will catch you on the next episode.